Okay, today we're looking at the Indian drama Shakuntala. And first thing I want to point out, page 131 in the introduction, Indian drama is not about strong emotion, passion. It's about sentiment. Sentiment is awe. As the story opens, page 135, King Dushanta is hunting, and at least in this translation, it's not clear whether it's antelope or deer. It kind of goes back and forth. They're similar, but they're not the same animal. But at any rate, he's hunting, and as he's hunting, page 136, we get a voice from off stage. Uh, the the hermits, the ascetics, are blocking the king's hunt. You see, asceticism in India carries with it the idea of ahimsa, non-injury, because this is a holy place. You are not allowed to injure any animals there. There is no hunting allowed, not even if you're the king. And on page 137, as the king, at the bottom, as the king puts his bow and arrow away, he looks around and kind of sees things they didn't notice, that he realizes should have told him that this was a holy place, that there was no hunting. Underneath the tree trunks, where parrots breed in holes in the tree trunks, there are grains of rice scattered around that had been left as offerings, and little tiny altars, polished slabs, where ngudi fruit, I think they're actually nuts, had been placed. He notices that the deer are not startled to hear human voices, which of course means they've never been hunted. Deer around here, in the slightest sight or sound from you, and they are gone. On the paths, you can see where the monks have been bathing in the water and got out, and the water dripped off of them, and how underneath the trees there are channels dug to water them. And so he kind of should have known this is a holy place, no hunting. Well, the king decides to take a look around, and he hears some voices of young girls carrying water pots. And he hides behind a tree. And Shakuntala comes in. Now, just to confuse you, Shakuntala's name is spelled two different ways. It's spelled one way in the title of this selection, and spelled another way in the text. The editor should not have done that. He should have settled on one spelling or the other. Either one is okay. India doesn't use our alphabet, so when you transliterate it, there's choices, but he should have been consistent. Shakuntala and her two friends, Priyamvada and Anasuya, which may be the Indian form of Anasu, are the girls who are watering the plants. And on top of page 139, And Asuya says that to Shakuntala that her father, Kanwa, who's the head of this, what amounts to a monastery, um, seems to care more about the shrubs than you because he assigns you the job of watering the plants. And look at her response. I cannot regard it as a task. I really feel a sisterly love for those plants. Now, have any of you ever done any gardening? I've planted a number of trees and shrubs in our yard. And while I take a pride when something grows and looks pretty, and I like flowering trees and flowering shrubs for that reason. Um, can't say that I feel a brotherly love for them. I think this is the Indian idea of the oneness of all things, that everything is Brahman. And well, as he's hiding behind the tree, Shakuntala is complaining that her friend Priyambada has tied her dress too tightly up topside. Um, Women's clothes have a tendency to fasten in the back um, in order to emphasize their assets up front. And what this tells us actually is Shakuntala's age. She's reached puberty and is developing. And so she's complaining about the dress being too tight. And Priyamvada says, hey, don't blame me, blame your own blooming youthfulness. And the king, although he notices that her dress is very simple, very plain, that actually serves only to enhance how good she looks. Well, with this clue that these are young girls, junior high age in our society, Priyambada teases Shakuntala about the way she's looking at the jasmine vine, page 140. Jasmine is a flowering vine. And so it needs a tree or a shrub or a trellis to climb up. I actually planted a couple of jasmines in my yard with a trellis to climb on as a place to store the garbage can. Or kind of hide it. She's wishing that as the jasmine is united to a suitable tree, so in like manner she may obtain a husband worthy of her. As the jasmine is wrapping itself around the tree. You get the idea. The king, still hiding behind the tree, thinks, that would be nice. But he thinks there's a problem because if she is the daughter of Kanwa, the head of the hermitage, then you would think that she would belong to Kanwa's caste, which is the Brahmin caste. And yet he has some hope that she is free to wed a warrior king, my heart attests. For in conflicting doubts, the secret promptings of a good man's soul are an unerring index of the truth. Okay. He has a kind of instinctive intuition that in his conscience that somehow it must be okay for him to marry her. And they actually meet when her watering the plants disturbs a bee, and he steps out from behind the tree where he's been hiding, and not top of page 141, he kind of envies the bee. Happy bee, how boldly dost thou try to steal the luster from her sparkling eye, and in thy circling movements hover near to murmur tender secrets in her ear, whisper sweet nothings in her ear. Or as she coyly, shyly waves her hand to sip voluptuous nectar from her lower lip, steal a kiss. When the king steps out from behind the tree to do the macho thing and chase off the bee, um, and they sit down to talk a little bit. Page 142 at the top. Notice Shakuntala's response. And this is labeled an aside. An aside is a convention in a play where the character speaks directly to the audience in order that we know what they're thinking. And it's just kind of assumed that the other characters on the stage don't hear it. How is it that the sight of this man has made me sensible of emotions inconsistent with religious vows? He makes her little heart go pitter-pat. Now, he doesn't want to tell them that he's actually the king, and so he says he serves the king and has been appointed to administer justice and religion, and has come to the sacred grove to make sure the rights of the hermits are free from obstruction. He is the person, he says, that the king has appointed to make sure that they are safe. The other two girls suggest that if Kanwa were home today, he would honor our distinguished guest with an offering of the most precious of his possessions. Now, what do you suppose that most precious possession is? Well, there is nothing more precious to a father than his little girl. Now, it's very improper for Shakuntala, because she is of high status, to talk directly to a man that she doesn't know. But because her friends are of lower status, it's okay for them. And so the king wants to ask them a few questions about Shakuntala. It would be improper for him to ask these directly to her, and improper for her to answer. So he asks her friends. The very bottom, page 142. The sage Kanwa lives in the constant practice of austerities. Kanwa is known as a very strict ascetic. Now, included among that is going to be celibacy. So how is Shakuntala called his daughter? Top of page 143, Anasuya answers and it starts with a holy man of regal caste. Okay, a Raja, a king, who was a great ascetic named Viswamitra. And Anasuya says he's the real father of our friend. Kanwa is her adoptive father. He brought her up when she was deserted by her mother. So she would actually belong to the caste of her real father, not her adoptive father. But the reference to being deserted by her mother only piques the king's curiosity. deserted by her mother. Tell me the story. Tell me the story from the beginning. Well, Anasuya says the Viswamitra was performing severe penance on the riverbank, and the gods became jealous. That's also a common theme in Indian mythology, gods becoming jealous of a really strict ascetic practice. And so they send the nymph Menaka to distract him. Nymphs are minor goddesses. They also appear in ancient Greek mythology. Remember the discussion of how the European languages are related to Indian languages? That there is some contact in the mythology as well. The nymphs are minor goddesses who are um, described as being extremely beautiful and highly sexual, which is why a female sex addict is referred to as a nymphomaniac. That's where the word comes from. And so Anasuya says Viswamitra, gazing at the bewitching beauty of that nymph at a season when spring being in its glory, the saying in spring, a young man's fancy turns to thoughts of love. And she her voice trails off there because she doesn't want to come right out and say what comes next. Well, the king can figure it out. Shakuntala then is the offspring of the nymph. Okay. Her father is Viswamitra, her mother, this nymph Menaka. The gods succeeded in disrupting his asceticism and distracting him from it. So, question number 1 answered positively. She is, in fact, of the same caste as King Dushanta, and so therefore, as far as that goes, he might be able to marry her as he is interested in doing. But he has to ask one more thing, bottom page 143. Will she be bound by solitary vows opposed to love till her espousals only? Is she only obligated to live here at the hermitage until she gets married? Or will she ever dwell with these her cherished fawns? He's asking about Kanwa's intentions. Is he going to allow her to marry, or is it his intention to keep her at the hermitage, living kind of like a nun for her whole life? Top page 144, Priyamvada answers that she's been in the practice of religious duties and has lived in subjugation to her foster father. But it's his fixed intention to give her away in marriage to a husband worthy of her. And the king says to the audience, an aside, I know where her dad can find a willing husband for her. Well, Shakuntala is getting embarrassed, and she gets up to leave. And her friends stop her, Priyamvada saying, you promised that you'd water 2 more shrubs. And the king intervenes, bottom page 144. Spare her this trouble, gentle maiden. The exertion of watering the shrubs has already fatigued her. The water jar has overtasked the strength of her slim arms. Her shoulders droop, her hands are ruddy, red, flushed with the glow of quickened pulses. She's looking faint. She's flushed with her heart racing. Even now her agitated breath imparts unwanted tremor to her heaving breast. She's breathing hard. She's starting to break out in perspiration on her face. She is undoing her hair. She's overheating. Now he thinks this is because the work of watering the plants is too hard for her. But is there another explanation for these symptoms? Well, the king wants to stay for a while because he is interested in Shakuntala. And on page 154, the hermits provide him with the perfect excuse. Their leader, the great sage Kanwa, is away. And while he's gone, evil demons are disturbing our sacrificial rites. And so they want the king to stay and protect them. Well, just as he has the perfect excuse to stay, there arises a complication. Bottom page 154. A messenger arrives from the palace, and the king's mother, the queen mother, is intending to hold a religious ritual on the king's behalf, and she wants him to be there. Now, I don't know about you, but I've never figured out a way to be two places at once. And the conflict is that he has two duties, top of page 155, that are too sacred to be neglected. And he's trying to figure out, how can I do them both? And he hits on a solution. His jester, one of his officials, Mathavya, which is the Indian form of the name Matthew, was his playmate in childhood. Mathavya's father probably lived, parents in fact, probably lived in the palace. The most important people who served the king actually lived in the palace with the royal family. The queen has always received you like a second son. Go you then back to her and tell her of my solemn engagement to assist these holy men. You can supply my place in the ceremony. Matthew will take his place in the ceremony back in the palace. He will stay and protect the hermits. Well, Shakuntala and Dushanta are both falling in love. They're love sick, in fact. They're not interested in anything. They're not eating. They're not doing anything. They just really kind of laying around thinking of each other. And so they write a love letter as if it's from Shakuntala to the king, and they manage to get it where they want Shakuntala to write the love letter. And she's thinking about it, but she expresses a fear of being rejected. It can be kind of scary to be falling in love because there's no guarantee the person you're falling in love with has the same kind of feelings for you. But in this case, they are. And so the king and Shakuntala are talking. Page 163. Shakuntala gets up to go when he offers to kind of give her a massage, a foot massage. She is worried about that being improper. That can be kind of foreplay. And she gets up to go, and he takes hold of her, and she says, very bottom, page 163, infringe not the rules of decorum, mighty descendant of Puru. Remember, though I love you, I have no power to dispose of myself. It is her father who decides who she marries, not her. And his response, page 164, at the top, is that the law permits marriage without consulting him. It's called a Gandharva marriage, a marriage without the normal ceremonies. Essentially a secret marriage where the bridegroom plights his troth, pledges his faith, and each vows mutual allegiance to the other. And such marriages too are authorized on earth, and many daughters of royal saints have married their husband this way. Well, by the time you get to Act 4, that marriage has taken place. And on page 166, the king has gone back to the capital, and Anasu is concerned that he might forget her. Priyambada is a little bit more trusting that that the king is a good man and will honor the vows that he has made to her. But there's this voice off stage calling, demanding attention. And Shakuntala, because she can't think about anything but her husband, doesn't respond quickly enough, and so this voice curses her that he even of whom thou thinkest shall think no more of thee, nor in his heart retain thy image. That he's going to forget her. Well, Priyambada recognizes who this is. This is the holy man Durvasis, who's known to have a short fuse, and he's gotten ticked off, and she goes and kind of tries to make things up to him, and he does provide, bottom of 167, a way of ending the curse. That when the king sees the ring that he has left with Shakuntala, this is not a wedding ring like we would use. This is a signet ring that he would use to put his seal on official documents that has his name engraved on it. When the king sees that ring, he will remember her. And Anasu is like, all right, man, she's got that ring. No problem. Well, in Act 4, they're getting ready to send Shakuntala to the capital, and everybody is giving her advice on how to manage there, um, and deal with the other wives of the king. Um, when she gets there, page 183, he doesn't. He can't remember her. I mean, she stirs something in him, but he doesn't remember her. And the situation is really complicated, bottom of page 183, as one of the monks tells the king that she expects soon to be the mother of your child. But he doesn't remember her. And it's obvious that she is about to become a mother. Well, she goes to retrieve the ring, bottom page 185, and it's gone. Top of 186, it must have slipped off when she was washing in the sacred pool. And the king now, how convenient. See, he thinks he's being set up now. And the king doesn't know what to do. Page 188, the priest provides a solution that he will give the woman asylum, and since the king has no children, and the soothsayers have predicted that your firstborn will have universal dominion, look and see if the hermit's daughter produces a son that has certain marks um, on his hands that were associated with power, then you accept her as your wife. If not, you send her back to her father. On page 189, Shakuntala is carried up into the heavens. The gods are rescuing her. And on page 190, this fisherman is brought in, um, accused of theft because he has a ring with the king's signature on it. And fishermen were looked down on as a profession in India. And so the fisherman is brought in before the king. And of course, as soon as he sees the ring, he remembers. And now the king has to go out and find Shakuntala, and he travels up into the heavens to do so. And he confesses his failure to fulfill his vows to Shakuntala, and he realizes what happened. Now he explains how, the ring, she dropped the ring in the pool, the fish swallowed the carp, and the fisherman found it when he caught the carp and was cleaning the fish. And in the end, they are ultimately reunited. In a beautiful love story. Okay, see you next time.